Hello and welcome Exiles to look at a build I've been working on. It's Armageddon brand Elementalist, and I wanted to try out a build where I opt for a Sublime Vision, which is really cheap because no one uses Anger, and that is, it's going to shape the core of the idea of what I'm building around here. Sublime Vision, Anger gives you Scorch. Generally, Scorch versus Ignite. Ignite is terrible for hit base versus I wanted to do Scorch. So that was what I was going for. And then Elementalist, I could still include Shock. And then I could have gone for 40% chills, but I opted for going for the Reflect Immunity and Elemental Damage Shield. Now, the thing about when you do Sublime Vision is basically you don't have defenses in terms of your auras. Unless you're doing a Determination +1 Endurance Charge aura or a Grace +1 Frenzy or something like that, you're not going to have a defensive aura. Generally, a lot of the auras are offensive: Haste, Action Speed, Hatred, Brutal, stuff like that. It deactivates your defensive auras. So how do you get defenses if you're going to do something like that? Well, one of my go-tos for if I think I'm going to play defensively without defensive auras is Doppelganger's Guise. It gives you 40% less damage taken for Chaos and Physical. This gives you a decent amount of damage mitigation for Fizz, which you are going to have a very hard time getting without Determination, and it gives you something to deal with Chaos, which if you combine this with Divine Flesh, that helps mitigate elemental damage too. I opted to combine this as well with Eternal Damnation, so that way a large portion of my elemental damage is going to Chaos, which then heavily gets mitigated thanks to Doppelganger's Guise, and then the leftover portion that is still elemental actually gets another 30-something% damage reduction. On top of this, ideally, if I did some really nice min-max gear, I could probably force in Spell Suppress, but it would require, instead of branching over as much to this side, going more towards here for the suppress nodes probably, and having fairly good suppression gear and probably having to get suppress on my shield and dropping the higher DPS shield that I have here. Now, basically, the way Armageddon brand works pretty simply, you can attach up to 2 brands on an enemy, and those will keep popping on the enemy. I opted for the idea of getting a bunch of brand recall CDR because the interesting thing about Armageddon brand is if I'm over here and I do brand recall, I actually get all of those hits to simultaneously hit one enemy. Not only that, but while you're mapping and you constantly are doing this, and you constantly have these things just continually coming back on you, because it happens every 1 second or 1 point whatever seconds it is, it does look pretty aesthetic, especially when the Armageddon brands are also going around hitting enemies. And for whatever reason, I just think this MTX here for Armageddon brand is just really, it's really pretty. It's, it's MTX and PoE. It cost a fortune. Like, it was $14 to get the Celestial brand MTX, right? But I still have enjoyed playing with it just because it's a fun little thing. Now, collectively on top of that, I mostly went for a decent amount of crafted rares. For example, if you get a rare shield with the Fractured Spell Crit, which is a pretty cheap base, all you have to do is Reforge Caster, which is actually pretty cheap to get a high % spell damage, and then depending on what you're doing, whether you're doing Fire, Lightning, Cold, or Chaos, you can then do a Prefixes Can't Be Changed, Augment Chaos, something like that, or Augment Fire for me getting a +1 Fire. You can force on pretty high DPS shields relatively easy if you do Reforge Casters with a Fractured Spell Crit Chance base, because it's always going to roll spell damage or a +1. So we crafted some decent shields. I actually crafted a couple shields where I hit really good mods for Hex Blast, and I was like, okay, I'll just resell this and buy another base because the bases were cheap. Outside of that, the classic of crafting a wand with using the fossil combination to get a plus all spell, get a fractured +1 fire. Not too expensive with wand bases because usually that's only expensive for scepters because it's more of a RF thing. When you go to a wand bases, RF characters don't care about wand bases because spell damage doesn't apply to RF. So get yourself some nice fractures, and that was the general theme of this, is getting nice fractures and then doing some pretty standard crafting. So all in all, I had some fun crafting some rares, and this is what the character turned out with. I'm not going to make a full build guide on this character because I think it's just kind of middle of the road. It's not a character where I want to fully put behind and say, yes, go play this build. I think it's a little bit too weak defensively and not strong enough offensively to be a character I'm going to recommend. It is a character I've enjoyed playing and enjoyed setting up for and stuff, but ultimately wasn't selling me enough, especially for the cost, This is roughly represents, I think I crafted this gear for around 20 to 30 divines, and then you add in the Empower, that's another 5 to 10. I don't know how much Empower 4 is. I bought it a month ago or 3 weeks ago or something, and I've just been holding on to it for different characters. And then also I did the +1 charge forbidden power nodes, which were the Forbidden Flame Jewel was 10 divines, the other one was like 1 divine. So this is roughly a 45 to 50 divine character investment total. It's fairly expensive for, I would say, enjoyable results. I've enjoyed playing it, but not something where I'm saying, hey, this is overpowered. So I'm going to give you a quick showcase of what this character looks like in a mapping environment. And then you can kind of look for it yourself and basically make your own mind up if you think it is a character that looks like it's fun to play. I think it's very aesthetically pleasing, but if I'm going to go for raw performance, right, then I have to judge it more harshly, and hence not a full guide will be done. All in all, though, I still really enjoyed playing this character, and I do want to keep playing this character a little bit more, and I do enjoy doing Sanctum, so I'm probably going to go ahead and save some more rooms, because it's been pretty good for Sanctum. I mean, it's not going to do a hitless run, but it can do consistently probably challenge runs. It has enough damage and enough mobility to it that it can perform at those high levels. The other thing is when you get these power charges, you end up having quite a bit of AoE, which is nice as well on these Armageddon brands. Go to this other side. Alright, so it's pretty much full cleared, except I missed that side down there, which is fine. And as you can see, this is a Petrified Blood build. And one thing I know about Petrified Blood is part of the reason why I'm probably not as happy with the tankiness. You always feel like you're on the edge of danger. Dots are quite scary. This character has recoup, it has leech, it has some level of regen, it has regen when hit to doppelgangers guys, it has some level of sustain mechanics that are nice, but it's still scary when it comes to dots, and it still like has a lower one hit threshold just because Petrified Blood was too good of an aura. It's not an aura, so I can afford to do it, right? It was too good for me to pass it up, right? It's basically when you have Sublime Vision, you can't do other auras, but you can do Heralds. So we have Herald of Ash. You can do Petrified Blood. That's not an aura. You can do Flesh and Stone. You could do Tempest Shield. You could do Arctic Armor. Those things you can fit into a build with Sublime Vision build, and that gives you some level of extra defenses or extra utility, whatever you're looking for. But still, if you're going to do Sublime Vision, there's also this extra cost of, hey, guess what? Now that you're doing Sublime Vision, well, you're going to have a bit more trouble in terms of defenses and being able to do defensive auras, because really it's hard to make a character that has any level of tank without determination, without grace. Those are some pretty core concepts to work with, and this is what we came up with. Anyways, I just wanted to make this video to showcase the character I'd been working on recently. I wish I could say, hey, this is a really, really OP character, do play it. I can just say to you, hey, I enjoyed playing this character, and maybe if you get some inspiration from it, you can apply some of the concepts to your own build. But until the next one, hopefully enjoy this video on the Armageddon brand Elementalist, and take care as always. Thanks for watching. Peace out, Exiles.